Okay, I'm recording. So this is lesson 2, recognition and identification. So in this, we're going to look for all the clues that guide us to recognizing a hazardous material incident, even though we may approach the scene and maybe that's not what we were called for hazardous materials wise, but it's still part of our responsibility to recognize them, not only for our own safety, but for the safety of everyone else, and then start identifying the material the best we can. So that's what we're going to start with tonight. There are 6 hazmat recognition clues. That's in bold, 6 hazmat recognition clues. You'll need to know what those are. We're going to talk about each one. Number 1, occupancy and location. Number 2, the container shape and size. 3, placards and labels. Number 4, shipping papers or facility documents. Number 5, markings and colors. And number 6, the one we really don't want to use, at least not our own, is human senses. So occupancy and location. Let's talk about fixed facilities first. That's mostly what we're talking about. We're talking about occupancy and location. So the occupancy, what does that mean? That is how a facility is being used. So is it a restaurant? Is it a warehouse? Is it a manufacturing facility, a hardware store, retail location, gas station? That is what the occupancy describes. The location is pretty obvious. Is it in a manufacturing complex, or is it an industrial park? 2 different things. You'll need to know those. 2 types of fixed facilities are the manufacturing complex. So that's a single company. That's the key identifier there. Distinguishing item is it's a single company where one or more products are produced from its constituent components. The other type of fixed facility is an industrial park. Another type of fixed facility, industrial park. These are multiple companies in a geographical area or a complex, which are often completely independent. So manufacturing complex is a single company, an industrial park is multiple companies. That's the key differentiator there. Some other types of fixed facilities, as I mentioned, a service station or a garage, hardware store, medical facilities, doctor's office, dentist office, farms, industrial sites, residences, shops, stores, construction sites, educational sites, military installations. The main focus of this lesson is to, you guys have heard of red flags before. These are to give you what those red flags would be. For example, I responded to the SIUE New Science building a couple of years ago for a student who had a period of unconsciousness. Okay, no big deal, happens every once in a while. We pull up and SIU PD tells us there's a second student with the exact same complaint. You got multiple people in the same place with the same medical problem, and it's a science building. Red flag. See what I mean? So we get in the elevator, and of course, they're on the 3rd floor, and I have everybody stay in the elevator with me, my partner, and the police officer, and I stick my head out the elevator and look down the hall, and I see a group of people. So I yell, asking them if there was a release of any type of chemical. And of course, they looked at me like I had no idea what I was talking about. So I asked again, and that's when the instructor, the professor, whatever, realized what I was getting at, and they confirmed that it was not a chemical release, but it very well could have. That red flag is the important part, that I had that high index of suspicion and was able to protect, even though there wasn't any hazard present. If it had been, then everyone would have been protected who was responding. We have had chemical exposure in that building since then. So what are some hazards with fixed facilities? Well, it could be on fire, either a structure fire or some type of process equipment. There could be a hazmat release, and also confined spaces. So those are the hazards that you would find at fixed facilities. As we mentioned last week, hazardous materials, for the majority of their lifespan, they are being stored. These are the four types of basic four types of storage. One is low pressure, so it's either no or very low pressure. It's usually under 100 psi. Up to 100 psi is considered low pressure. High pressure, cryogenic, and dry storage. So we're going to talk about some low pressure storage. We have the above ground horizontal tank, holds just about anything that's not under pressure, any liquid that is not under pressure. There's a cone roof tank. It's got a roof that's shaped like a cone. You have the open top floating roof tank. So many of these large tanks we found at a refinery, like the one in Roxana. There's an open top floating roof tank. So you'll see the stairs going up the side, and then there's a gantry or stairwell gantry going toward the center. There is a roof that is exposed to the outside that floats up and down on the top of the liquid in there to reduce the vapor space. That's the point of that. Bad things happen when that floating roof gets canted and no longer covers that liquid surface. There's also a covered top floating roof tank, or a covered floating roof tank. So it's a cone roof, just like the cone roof tank, except it has these vents along the top, the arrows are pointing to. So it's got an internal floating roof. So it's a combination of that open top floating roof tank and the cone roof tank put together. Again, the internal roof floats on top of the liquid to reduce the vapor space. And so the vents allow the air above that, between the roof and the cone top roof, to equalize the pressure. You got a lifter roof tank. It's got an external roof on it. There's a vapor dome. It's under a little bit more pressure than atmospheric. Everything so far has been atmospheric pressure. So the only pressure with the liquid would be the head pressure from gravity. More low pressure tanks. There's an underground storage tank. These are like what you'd find at a gas station. There's something that's bold and underlined. Any tank with more than 10% surface area underground is considered an underground tank. So you need to know that. So anything that's more than 10% underground is considered an underground tank. A smaller dome roof tank contains just about anything liquid. Now we're going to high pressure. Now I want you to realize, well, the key feature of a high pressure container is the rounded ends. So the ends, or the whole thing has got this roundedness to it, and that indicates it's high pressure. So that's what I want you to clue into. If you see something with rounded ends, or it's the whole container is rounded, has a rounded nature to it, then I want you to automatically think high pressure. There's a noded spheroid tank, which has, as it said, nodes, different sections. So these are all going to be probably flammable liquids, and flammable liquids or flammable gases made liquid because of the pressure. There's also a horizontal pressure vessel. A lot of bad stuff in those. A lot of bad stuff can be in those. There's a spheroid tank, shaped like a sphere. Spherical, and then cryogenic. Not so much flammable as just cold. We'll talk about that later. So container shape and size. This is in reference, the first part is going to be transportation. The different ways hazardous chemicals are transported is railway, roadway, waterway, air, and pipeline. So we're going to start out with railway, non-pressure tank car, up to 100 psi, holds just about anything, all kinds of different contents. So the key to identifying a non-pressure tank car, keep in mind, could be up to 100 psi, it can still be pretty pressurized, typically has exposed fittings and piping. And what we're talking about is this right here on top. We have multiple exposed fittings and pipings up here on top. Oops, up here on top. Now you can't get something with a expansion dome. Don't see those very often. Most of the time you'll see this right here, just multiple outlets, inlets, connection points right here in the top. That's non-pressure. So as soon as you see that, you know it's non-pressure. Now you have a pressure tank car above 100 psi. It's going to have a single top loading, unloading, top loading and unloading valve system. And it's going to be all contained in this one area here. There's not multiple fittings. That's the key there. There's multiple fittings inside here, but inside this shield, it's really a shield to protect the valving, there's only one area. You have a cryogenic liquid tank car. It's going to have a control box on the side and the bottom for the rail car. Hopper car, it's going to hold dry materials. They're going to have this conical underbelly discharge system under here. That's how you know that. Then you have a high pressure tube car. So you got multiple tubes with rounded ends. So you know it's high pressure. Trailer on a flat car. They just pick up a roadway trailer, put it on a flat car. You also have container on a flat car. Can hold a hazardous material. Over the road transportation, see these most often. So we have they're now called these MC 306 and DOT 406 are manufacturing standards. The DOT 406 standard is the current standard, but you still see the MC 306 on the road. So that's why we still talk about them. This is a non-pressure liquid tank car. It can hold flammable or combustible liquids, any type of other liquid. It has an oval shape. So that's the key you're looking for, as an oval. So kind of like the bottom of a 6, a little way to remember it. So if it looks like the bottom of a 6, it's a 406. So it's got the oval shape, it's a 406. Then there's the DOT 407. It's also a low pressure chemical tank car. It also holds food products as well. It has a horseshoe shape. So it's got this horseshoe shape to it. And some people think horseshoes are lucky. Some people think the number 7 is lucky. So if you got a horseshoe shape, think 407. You got the 412. This is a corrosive liquid rail trailer. So it's going to have a rounded cross section as opposed to a horseshoe cross section. It also has a smaller diameter, has thicker walls. It also has these stiffening rings along the side of it, and it's usually top loading. It might have a different color around the loading port because it's got a protective paint on it. So the reason this is a beefier trailer is because it holds corrosive liquids, and corrosives are typically more dense than other liquids. So they're going to weigh more per volume. So they need to be more robust in their construction. So it's going to be circular for even distribution of the pressure. And it's going to be thicker walls with the stiffening rings. And then because it's corrosive, it's going to have usually special paint around the loading and unloading port. So that's the 412. The 331 is a high pressure tank car. See the rounded ends? Just like that. It's going to be pressurized gases that are made into a liquid because of the pressure. The MC338 is the cryogenic liquid tank car. This has the control and release or unloading and loading valving on the back. Sometimes the cabinet on the back is not as pronounced as this diagram here, but you'll tell a difference. You can tell there's some type of cabinet back here for loading and unloading cryogenics. Now keep in mind that so the difference between a pressure tank and a cryogenic tank is they both contain liquids, that when the liquid inside is no longer inside that container, it becomes a gas. The difference is how they are made into a liquid. A pressure tank car is made a liquid by increasing the pressure, and cryogenic is made liquefied by lowering the temperature. So that's important. Also over the road, you have the compressed gas tube trailer. Pretty simple there. And then dry bulk. Again, you're going to have the conical shaped underbelly discharge ports for unloading those solids to wherever they need to go. So we have intermodal tanks as well. These intermodal just means it can move from one mode of transportation from another. So it can go from roadway to railway to water and not change the container, not have to load or unload the material itself, just the container. So you have the non-pressure intermodal tank. Again, it's got flat ends, so you know it's non-pressure. And then there's pressure intermodal tank. It's got the rounded ends here, so you know it's high pressure. Cryogenic, it's going to look like the non-pressure, but it's going to have a very thick insulating jacket layer around it. Then you have the tube for high pressure gases. And then there's a bag. You can have hazardous materials just in a bag. What is a bag? It's flexible. It's made of paper, plastic, film, or woven material, or something similar. It's a bag. You can also have something called a carboy. It's glass or plastic bottle, maybe round or rectangular. These are examples of carboys. They may also be it may be so rounded that they're in like a cardboard kind of box thing, so that they don't fall over. This is somebody's home brew, looks like that, but a good example. And then you have a jerry can, which is a rectangular plastic carboy. It's a term used in UN regulations. So that's a jerry can there. Then you have a cylinder. This is a pressure vessel designed for pressures higher than 40. And they have a circular cross section. So you can see here, you can have just about any type of pressurized gas in a cylinder. Then we're going to talk about ton containers. So these are mostly seen at water treatment plants or wastewater treatment plants. They may contain chlorine or sulfur dioxide, sometimes anhydrous ammonia or freon. The only ones I've ever seen are at a water or wastewater treatment plant containing chlorine. They usually stored and they have concave ends, and all their fittings are on one end there. They have fusible link pressure relief devices. You need to be a technician to and have technician training to mitigate the leaks on here. We have special kits that allow us to cap those and whatnot. Usually, if they're being where the locations where they normally are have chlorine sensors, so they're pretty sensitive. So we can know that there's a chlorine leak. Usually, there's a flashing light of some sort to let you know that the chlorine detection system has activated. Not every water treatment plant uses these. Sometimes I've seen one treatment plant that uses this type of 150-pound cylinder. Just have multiple of them together, just depends. Then you have the drum. It can be flat end or convex ended cylindrical packaging. It can be metal, fiberboard, plastic, plywood. Holds between 35 and 95 gallons, depending on the size. Usually just call it a 55-gallon drum. That's pretty close, right in the middle. Intermediate bulk packaging continued. This is a tote, usually plastic container with a metal framework around it. Lots of different chemicals are in these. You can buy firefighting foam concentrate stored in these. Holds about 200 to 300 gallons. Just so you know, if one opens up, that's what you're going to have on the ground. That's a tote. They're moved around by forklifts. Then you have the cryogenic container, or called Dewar or Dewar. I'm not sure it's D-E-W-A-R. They're smaller. They hold the liquid nitrogen, usually. All right, radioactive containers. So there's multiple names for the radioactive containers. The first one we're going to talk about is called accepted. This has limited radioactivity or reactivity, low levels of radioactivity, no risk to public or environment unless you get it in your body. There's no requirement to be marked or labeled on the package or even in the shipping papers. That's how low it is. But it could be just a cardboard box, like shown there. So for example, there's a certain type of smoke detector that uses a radioactive material. And so that radioactive material would be, or the smoke detectors could be stored in accepted type radioactive packaging. This could also be just clothing from someone who works with radioactive materials. So that's the lowest protection because it's got the lowest amount of radioactivity. Then there's industrial, also known as strong and tight. Again, materials with low radioactivity. It's not required to be marked or labeled, or the package or the shipping papers. Again, slightly contaminated clothing, laboratory samples, smoke detectors as well. So like something like this cardboard box could be in somebody's car, that they're a delivery person of some sort. So they could get in a crash, and you have radioactive material there. As long as the box is intact, you're good. So industrial, also known as strong and tight. Now we're getting into the bad stuff. There's a type A as well, relatively high specific activity levels. It will be marked on shipping papers that it's radioactive. So this would include radiopharmaceuticals and certain industrial products. So this is type A, so high-end steel drum. And then there's type B. Exceeds the limits of type A package requirements. They present a radiation hazard to the public or the environment. Examples would be spent nuclear fuel, and the packaging and shipping papers are identified. Now, these containers, they don't mention it in the slide, but they are also accompanied by armed guards. So if you see one of these out in the wild, then you want to stay far away, because either the radiation is going to get you or the bullets. And they do not mess around, the people with the bullets or the radiation. So, so like this bottom one here example would be on a trailer. These are like big stuff. So a trailer, either a rail car or a flatbed rail car or flatbed trailer. Like these are on flatbed trailers here. So this is the big stuff here. All right, so that's all the containers. Placards and labels are both, they're different, but what's similar to both of them, they're both located on bulk packaging and vehicles, or they can be. They indicates the primary hazard of the material. All right, what does that mean? So many hazardous materials have multiple hazards. They can affect you in different ways. The placard or the label will only mention one hazard, and it's what's considered the primary hazard. So just because you have a flammable liquid does not mean that it's not also corrosive or toxic. It could be both. Like gasoline is both flammable and toxic. There are some things that have to be placarded in any amount, no matter how much there is. Here's the examples. Whoops, you'll kind of need to know those. So explosive, just remember explosive 1, 2, and 3. Any type of poisonous gas, anything that's dangerous when wet or water reactive, anything that's poisonous 6.1, and anything that's radioactive 3. Okay. Different materials. There's a table. There's several tables that tell you at what point or how much quantity that you're transporting requires placarding. So there's a table called Table 2, the DOT standard. Most things in that table, you have to have over 1,000 pounds in order for it to be placarded. So what does that mean for us? You could have a truck carrying 900 pounds of a hazardous material, and from the outside, you wouldn't know it. What's the difference between 900 pounds of that material and 1,001 pounds of that material? To us, not very much. But them's the rules. So just because something is not labeled hazardous does not mean it's not contained in the container, especially with transportation. You can different types of designs. You can have worded. It can say flammable gas or poisonous gas or something like that. It can be wordless. So what is that? When a UN or NA number is not required to be displayed, except for class 7 radioactive. We'll get into classes here, or class 2 oxygen. They have to have the words on them. So what is the UN or NA number? UN is United Nations and NA is North America. It is a 4-digit number. It can also be displayed in an orange rectangular panel. Now, keep in mind that the number, say the number is 1903, that number may correspond to more than one specific product. However, the opposite is not true. A specific chemical only has one 4-digit UN number. Okay, so you can have one number can cover multiple products, but one product only has one number. So here's an example. There's 4 pieces of information on a placard or label. There's the background color, there's the symbol, the UN ID number that we just talked about, and then the hazard class. So those are the 4 pieces of information that it gives you. What's nice about this system is even if you only have one of those pieces of information, it'll get you started on what to do, what you got going on, and what to do about it. Again, the UNID number is 4 digits. They're used in the Emergency Response Guide, or the ERG, help us identify and reference the material. There's some examples of how that UN number is displayed. Mentioned if it's not on the placard itself, it can be on an orange background separately, or part of the placard itself. All right, placards only. Where do we see placards? They're displayed on rail tank cars, cargo tank trucks, portable tanks, bulk packages, and certain non-bulk packages. Most of the time, we're going to see them on transportation containers. All right, so the U.S. Department of Transportation has categorized materials by their hazard class. You're going to need to know how many hazard classes there are and start having an idea of what each one is. So class 1 is explosives, class 2 any type of gas, class 3 is flammable combustible liquids, class 4 is flammable solids, 5 is oxidizers and organic peroxides, class 6 is poisons, class 7 is radioactive, class 8 is corrosives, and class 9 is miscellaneous. There's a mnemonic on the side there if those help you in learning those. My only advice is to practice with it. Just over and over and over. All right, what's class 5? Oxidizers. What's class 8? Corrosives. Kind of thing. All right, so we're not going to read all this. Just know this, that the lower the number of explosives, the worse the explosion is. So the higher the number, the less explosive it is. So this is class 1, division 1, mass explosion hazard. They're the worst. And you notice that this is the explosion symbol right there. Explosives are also orange. Division 2, projection hazard, not a mass explosion. Division 3 is a fire hazard, minor blast hazard. Division 4, minor explosion hazard. There's 5 and 6, just different ones. All right, so explosives, orange, explosive symbol. The lower the number, the worse it is. We got DOT hazard class number 2, gases. So that's anything that has a vapor pressure greater than 43.5 psi, or completely gaseous at 68 at standard pressure. So these are things that when they're not if they're not being held under pressure, they want to be in gas. So whatever the normal environment is that we live in, if it's a gas, it's a gas. There are divisions as well. There's flammable gases. So you can see anything that's flammable is going to have a red background and then a flaming symbol as well. Non-flammable gases are going to have a green background. Also, they're non-poisonous. Non-flammable, non-poisonous gases are green backgrounds. That would be oxygen. You can have a poisonous gas. It's going to have a white background with some skull and crossbones there. It's bad stuff. So that's the gases. Class 3. So remember, poisonous gases are one of those things that have to be placarded in any amount, as well as the explosives. Class 3 is flammable and combustible liquids. So what's the difference? So a flammable liquid, flash point of above 100. The flash point over 100, but not above 141. And combustible takes a little bit more heat, over 141, but below 200 as a flashpoint. So flammable, more likely to catch on fire than combustible. Class 4 is flammable solids. This is going to be a red and white striped background. Same symbol though, same flaming symbol. There's also spontaneously combustible, which means if you contact it with air, within 5 minutes, it's going to be on fire and self-heat. Division 4, dangerous when wet, or Division 4.3, dangerous when wet. So if you see this symbol, it's going to have a blue symbol on it, or blue color, excuse me. You do not want to put your hose on it, even if it's on fire, especially if it's not on fire. And out in the wild, I've only seen this once. I was driving along the interstate one time and saw this placard. It was pretty interesting, having never seen it before. It looked like a lot of material. So that was scary. Class 5 is oxidizers. So what does that mean? Their chemical structure is such that they have an extra oxygen in there, that in the molecule, that they're very easy to give up, which means it enhances the combustion of other materials. So the oxidizer symbol is a flaming circle, and it'll have a yellow color to it for oxidizers, class 5. Division 5.2 is organic peroxides. So this would be an organic compound, so it's going to be a hydrocarbon, but they got bivalent double oxygen structure. Again, they want to give off that extra oxygen and release a lot of energy and help the fire along. Class 6 is poisons and poison inhalation hazards. So this is anything other than a gas that is known to be so toxic that is a health hazard during transportation. 6.2 is infectious substances or suspected of containing a poison. So this symbol is going to be the skull and crossbones. It's going to be black and white in color. Class 7 is radioactive. It's going to have the radiation trifoil on it. It's going to be yellow over white. And there's a couple of radioactivity levels. There's the 1, 2, and 3, 3 being the worst. Remember, radioactive 3 has to be placarded in any amount. The radioactive placard is a little special. It has some additional information on it. It should tell you what the material is and what its normal radioactive levels are. That way you can monitor for it and know if it's leaking, if it's getting out. Class 8 is corrosives. So this is a liquid or a solid that causes full thickness destruction of human skin, or a liquid that has severe corrosion rate on steel or aluminum. So the symbol is 2 test tubes pouring liquid onto steel and someone's hand, and it's disintegrating it. And it's white over black. That would be corrosive. Corrosive is either acid or base, one of the two. Don't confuse corrosive and caustic. Caustic is a base. Corrosive is both acid and base. Class 9 is miscellaneous. So what is that? That's anything that doesn't fit in the previous 8 categories. So that could be examples. So some type of anesthetic, anything that's noxious. So for example, would be like pepper spray or mace. Those are noxious, causes extreme annoyance or discomfort to flight crews. Could also be elevated temperature or marine pollutant. Could be class 9. So that's going to be a black and white stripe over white solid. In railroad use, you can also see a residue placard. which means that they can have up to 3% of the car volume still in there. So if it was transporting, say, just throw out there gasoline, you could still have 2% of the volume of the railroad car still have gasoline in it, which is a lot. Could be several thousand gallons. To us, it's a big deal. To them, not so much, but a residue placard would be indicated there. Some other placard facts: you can't have subsidiary risk placards and labels. They can tell you exactly what the primary and the subsidiary hazards materials. The primary hazard is always the hazard class on the bottom of the placard, so 1 through 9. So no matter what the secondary or subsidiary hazard is, the classification of the hazard class is the primary hazard. Labels, they're used on small packages, so like boxes. They're usually at least have to be visible on one side. Again, they indicate the primary hazard, and they're similar in their design to placards in most cases. So stickers. Then we come to pesticide labels, another specific label. They'll have a signal word that will indicate how much of a health hazard is associated with the product. So you'll need to know which order is the worst. So we're going to start at the bottom and work our way up. So if the signal word is caution, that's the lowest hazard. Warning is a moderate hazard. And if it says danger, poison, that indicates the highest hazard. So you'll need to know caution, warning, danger, poison, from lowest to highest. You'll need to know that. So what's also on the pesticide label is the manufacturer's name for the pesticide. Again, it'll be one of the signal words. Here we have the list in highest to lowest: danger, poison, warning, or caution. If it has a flash point below 80, it's extremely flammable. You'll also find the EPA registration number, and also a number called the establishment number that identifies the manufacturing facility. Pesticide label will also tell you how the pesticide will enter the body, so the routes of entry, any precautionary statements, the active ingredients, requirements for storage and disposal, any antidotes for poisoning if known, and if it's and also any indication that's an environmental hazard. So here's an example of a pesticide label. We can find all the parts on it. So we got the product name, number 1, Depesto. It's an insecticide. It's an emulsifiable concentrate. So it is emulsifiable, means it would normally separate into multi density products, but it's like been shaken up, or it has another chemical to cause the ingredients to not separate, and it's concentrated. So that means you normally mix it with water. Number 2, the ingredient statement. So the active ingredient, Pestoff bisalicylic acid, also some inert ingredients. 3, the manufacturer. There we go, manufactured by AZ Chemicals. That's nice. Number 4 is the EPA registration number right there. The number 5, the EPA establishment number, so we know where it was made. 6 is the product type, is a restricted use pesticide. Number 7, directions for use. Number 8 is the signal word. There we go. Let's see, danger, poison. So that would be the highest hazard. Number 9, precautionary statements. Number 10, statement of treatment, right there. 11, environmental hazards. 12, reentry statement. Not sure what that is. and the storage and disposal information. Some more placard and label facts. So placards, again, are affixed to transport vehicles and tanks. They are 10 3/4 inch minimum per side. And this is key, they're located on all 4 sides around the transport vehicle container. That's so if the transport vehicle is not on its wheels anymore, we can still see the placard. It's also not a diamond shape. Technically, it's a square on point. A little trivia. That will not be on the test, but you can impress your friends. Square on point. Labels, they're affixed to packages, containers, or cartons. They're about 4 inches per side. And usually they're just on one side, except for class 7, which was radioactive, needs to be on 2 sides. Another type of identifier is the Nfpa 704 symbol. It has 4 categories of information. Blue area is the health information, red is flammability, yellow is reactivity, and white is special considerations. These are on fixed facilities. Now, sometimes you'll see them other places as well, but they are specifically for buildings. All right, so we're not going to go through each one of these, but what I want you to know is that if there's the number in those colored sections indicates how much of a problem it is for that category. So blue is health. So 0 means there's no health hazard at all. 4 means they're too dangerous to be exposed. Few whiffs of vapor could cause death. You'll need full protective clothing and SCBA to protect it against inhalation. So anything in this category, anything over 2, you'll need an SCBA. So that there's the idea. All right, red is flammability. 0 means doesn't burn. 4 is very flammable gases or volatile flammable liquids. If possible, you would shut off the flow and keep cooling water streams on exposed tanks or containers. And you may have to back out, withdraw, may be necessary. So just the higher the number, the worse the hazard is. Yellow is reactivity. So 0 is they're normally stable, don't present any reactivity hazard to us. Number 4, readily capable of detonation or explosive decomposition at normal temperatures and pressures, which is where we like to live, if they are involved in a massive fire. So don't touch it. The white area for special considerations, there's only 2 authorized symbols from the NFPA 704. One is the W with a line through it, which means avoid the use of water, or an O and an X, which means it's an oxidizer, it means it's going to enhance the burning of something else. You may see other symbols, such as the radiation trifoil or COR, which means it's corrosive. Just know that there's only 2 that are approved by NFPA 704, the W with the line and the letters OX. Some other type of labels you might see is the Hazardous Materials Information System, HMIS. So it's very similar to the 704 when it regards to colors. However, the white section is not special considerations. It is for personal protective equipment. So the health, flammability, reactivity would have the same, as you can see, hazard index. 0 is minimal, 4 is the worst. So that's what the number would be in this box here. But then under personal protection, you would see letters or symbols that would tell you what you needed to wear PPE-wise for this material. Point is, if you see this, you're dealing with a hazardous material. Where also can we get information? Shipping papers and facility documents. This little chart here tells you shipping paper locations and who you can get it from and what they're called. So each type of transportation has a different name for them. They keep them in different places, and different people on those transportations have possession of them. So if the mode of transportation is air, it's called an air bill. You're going to find them in the cockpit with the pilot. If it's an over-the-road highway vehicle, it's called a bill of lading. It's usually in the vehicle cab with the driver. If it's over rail, it's called a waybill or consist. It's in the engine, since they don't have cabooses anymore, and it's with the conductor. And if it's over the road, it's called a dangerous cargo manifest. It's in the bridge or the pilot house with the captain or the master of the ship. Now, do we for the test, do we have to know these? Yes. Real world, you just go find whoever was on that, whoever's in charge of that vehicle, and say, where are your shipping papers? What do you got in your cargo? And they'll know what you're talking about. Or where's your manifest? All right. Some of you may have heard of MSDS, or Material Safety Data Sheets. Well, in the last few years, they've dropped the M, and now we're just calling them Safety Data Sheets, or SDS. They are mandated by 29 CFR 1910-1200, even though HAZWOPER, remember HAZWOPER is 1910-120. So where are you going to find them? If you're dealing with a hazardous material, and sometimes even non-hazardous materials, some manufacturers create SDS. They're located in all work areas at a central location. Employees must have free access, must be provided to local fire department upon request. They're produced by the manufacturers, and there's no set format. Now, what does that mean? The information that the SDS has on it is all the same from manufacturer to manufacturer, product to product. However, they don't have to all be in the same order. So let's talk about what the required sections are in an SDS. So the manufacturer's information, who made it and how we can get a hold of them. The ingredients, what are we dealing with here? Physical and chemical properties, super important. Physical and chemical properties is going to tell us where it is, what state of matter it should be in, and what's it going to do if the environment changes. Fire and explosion hazard data, reactivity, is it going to, if we shake it, or if there's a fire, if we heat it up, is it going to cause a problem? Any health hazard information, precautions for safe handling, like do we need gloves, do we need a respirator, do we need a shield, and then also control measures, like so some things react to organic material, so you don't want to try to create a dike around it with dirt, things like that. Don't put water on it. So that's the general information that's included in all SDS. We just don't know what order it's going to be in. There's also some military markings that you may see out and about. Class 1, Division 1. So stop sign, mass detonation hazard, stop. That's why I think about this one. So Class 1, Division 1, mass detonation hazard. So these classes and divisions are going to be very similar to our DOT ones, but the symbols are different. So stop sign, that's the worst. Just stop right there. An X, fragmentation hazard. It's Division 2. I just kind of imagine fragments coming out from the center there, like an X. Class 3, mass fire hazard. So fires usually burn up and out, kind of like that in that V shape there. And 4, moderate fire hazard. That's a diamond, I don't know. That's about it. Chemical hazards. If it's a guy in a chemical protective suit and it's red, it's highly toxic. If it's yellow, it's harassing agent. It just burns the eyes and mucous membranes and nose and whatnot. And then a white chemical protective suit is white phosphorus munitions. If there's a bucket with water being poured onto a fire that has a red circle and a line through it, don't put water on it. And if you see a guy wearing a gas mask, maybe you should too. Those are the remaining military markings that we talk about. Other markings and colors, company names. So if you see a container that has the word air gas or Shell or Phillips 66, there's a high suspicion that they're carrying a hazardous material. Also logos, company logos, the Shell, the Phillips 66 shield, the Amoco torch, things like that. Specific tank colors for certain tanks, green for non-poisonous gases. Also, the product might be stenciled on the container. Probably has that in it. All right, railroad tanker markings. So markings on railroad cars. So initials or reporting marks. You'll need to know this. This is bold and underlined. Initials and reporting marks are stenciled on both sides to the left when facing the car. So as you're looking at the car, on the left are what are called the initials or the reporting marks. So the CELX 6430 here, it's kind of like it is a unique identifier to this rail car. Okay, this is the initials, also called the reporting marks. They're on the left when you're looking at the side of the car. If you're looking on the end of the car, they're in the upper center of the tank car. Okay, so the reporting or the initials or reporting marks is this right here. We're going to talk about some more. We're going to a couple of times. Now, when we talk about a rail car, there are two ends to it. There's the A end and the B end, which is which? The B end has the brake handle. It's like a parking brake. So the B end has the brake. B end has the brake. So it's just a wheel. Usually has a chain on it that goes down to the trucks there. Carriage. So initials to the left when facing the car. So why is that important to us? Two things. One, when we contact the railroad, we can tell them this number and they should be able to tell us what's in it. Also, if we were able to get the waybill or the consist from the conductor, it'll be identified also. We'll know this car and what's in it. There's also an app that if you're in the know, you can punch in this code right here and it will tell you what's in it. So there is a code to it. If the last letter is an X, it is not owned by the railroad. So for the example, this one here, the last letter is an X. So the way this works is, so I own a railroad, but I'm hauling this, I am pulling this rail car, which is owned by somebody else. So it could be owned by, let's do Phillips 66. So Phillips 66 may own this rail car, but they don't have their own railroad. So that's why it has an X at the end there. If the last letter is Z, it's a trailer. And if it's a U, it's a different type of container. Capacity stencil shows the volume of the tank car in water, usually in gallons, sometimes liters. So typical capacity What type of rail car is this? Multiple points here. That would be a non-pressure rail car. Typical capacity is 25,000 gallons, give or take. So that's a lot. So like I said, 3% could be several. It's gonna be lots of material residue. So I'll tell you what its full weight is, or full volume is. Specification markings. It indicates the standard to which the rail car is built. So like right here, DOT A100 W1 is the standard to which this was constructed. They're on both sides of the tank, opposite end from the initials or the reporting marks. Also tells you what the safety valve is set to. So if this is a non-pressure rail car, which can hold up to 100 PSI, typically the pressure safety valve, pressure relief valve, PRV, is set to 75. So if that is venting, then you know it's either malfunctioning or it's functioning purposefully, and for some reason the pressure inside this rail car is higher than what's supposed to be. So for example, the tank is built to withstand 100 PSI, but the PRV opens at 75. Tells you when it was tested, that pressure, when it's going to be due, the safety valve, and then the tank, when it was tested and when it's tested too. Again, here's the handbrake reel, and so that would be the B end right there. Let's see, what else? Oh, another piece of trivia. These tanks can hold, for example, this one, 100 PSI internal pressure before it fails. But also we have atmospheric pressure, which is 14.7 PSI. If for some reason a vacuum is created inside here, it takes very little, sometimes less than 5 PSI to crush the rail car. They don't do well with external pressure. Not built for that. Intermodal markings, similar to rail. So we got initials or reporting marks again that identify this particular tank. There's a country code, size and type. Looks like this is what it was, the standard it was built to. Oh, sorry. First two numbers identify container length and height. 20 and 78. Pressure range of contents. I'm not sure how that applies there in that picture. Sometimes the name of the chemical is stenciled on the outside of a fixed facility tank. Sometimes they have special identification numbers. They can correspond to a site or emergency plans for that specific business. So on the outside of fixed facilities, we're looking for that Nfpa 704, some other ISO safety symbols. We haven't talked about the globally harmonized system yet. You've probably seen it around. So what is that? It's an international hazardous material labeling system. It is composed of symbols, signal words, and a hazard statement. Here's some examples. You've probably seen some of these: the health hazard, the flame, exclamation, gas cylinder, corrosive, exploding flame, over circle for oxidizers, environmental, and the skull and crossbones. So that's the GHS pictograms and what they mean. Also, with the globally harmonized system, the label will have more information on it possibly. Tells you what the hazards are, the pictograms, what the hazards are, and how to take care of things. Pipeline markings, again, we'll see the caution, warning, or danger. Caution being the lowest hazard, danger being the highest hazard. You're going to see information describing the transported commodity. So in this example, it's natural gas. And it will have the name and emergency telephone number of the carrier. So this is why you need binoculars. So we can, if there's a problem with this pipeline, we can call this number and get help. And then at our number 6 recognition clue, the human senses. So let's start with our visual sense. What are some things that will give us an idea that the hazardous material is present? Fume hoods to suck fumes out of laboratories, a spreading vapor cloud or smoke that's not normally there, unusually colored smoke, flames, changes in vegetation, that's important, container deterioration, also container. So what that means is if something's leaking, then it may discolor the container bulging or making noise. I guess that'd be hearing, sorry. Container bulging. Anybody who's being sick where they normally wouldn't be, dead or dying animals, and any discoloration of valves or piping. Also, if you see a rainbow sheen on water surfaces, wavy vapors over a volatile liquid, frost or ice buildup near a leaking valve, containers deformed by the force of a collision. So if somebody runs a forklift or a truck or something falls off of a truck or falls off a ledge, some height, container may be deformed, and any activated pressure relief valves. They're there for a reason. They're doing their job. So if they're doing their job, something's not right. With hearing, you can hear whistling or hissing from the pressure relief valve, pinging or popping from heat-exposed vessels. And when it comes to smell, it's best to use victim and witness accounts. Ask people, did you smell anything? What did it smell like? Don't try to figure it out. Don't go trying to smell it yourself. I know working in the fire service, a lot of times that's what we rely on to find fires or whatever. And but when it comes to hazardous materials, we don't want to be doing that. Limitations to using human senses. It's an indicator that responders are too close to an incident. So if you can smell something, then or maybe even taste something in the air, you're too close. Some chemicals you can become sensitized to, and you're not going to be able to detect the odor. So what does that mean? You will not know if the concentration changes. The concentration may get higher and more deadly, and you don't know it because your sense of smell has been sensitized. All right, so that's recognition and the start of identification. Anybody have any questions? Any at all? I'm here for you. Well, if any do come up, send me an email, send me a text message, and I will do my best to answer them for you. I don't have all the answers. If I don't know something, I will find out. Yeah, Austin, what's up?
Oh, I was just gonna say thanks.
Hey, no problem. My pleasure.
Is this class going to be on Tuesdays now normally?
Great question. Not normally. So every time my shift is on Wednesday, it'll be on the Tuesday before.
Okay.
So the next one will be, so I work tomorrow, so the next class will be on, because then if I moved it to Tuesday, we'd just run into the same problem of being on shift or whatever. That's why I record them. So if you guys are on shift or otherwise occupied, you can always go back and view it.
Okay.
So the only difference in that, so next week will be February 3rd, which will be Wednesday. And then the BOF class instructors asked me to move one practical, and that is the April 14th practical to a different day. Now I put in the schedule the Tuesday before, which is, I think that would be the 13th. If there's a problem with that and we can find a different day that works for everybody, I'm flexible in that regard. So I did post the schedule in the course materials section. I believe I thought I emailed it. Pretty sure I did. And so if there is a better date for everybody, then I am open to that.
All right, sounds good. Thanks.
All right. Thank you very much, guys. Have a great day.